It was a dark and stormy night as Inspector Manta gathered the suspects in the musty dining hall of his late uncle's crumbling castle. Professor Nutsworth, Clarisse, Dennis, and Martha all eyed each other suspiciously, wondering why they had been summoned. "One of you," Inspector Manta declared ominously, "committed murder." A lightning flash and thunderclap punctuated his accusation. The guests all startled in their seats. "This is preposterous," Professor Nutsworth objected, pounding the antique mahogany table. "I have an ironclad alibi." "Pipe down, Professor," Manta replied coolly. "I didn't even specify when the murder took place yet. And watch the table. That's a priceless family heirloom." Nutsworth slumped back petulantly. "I'll have you know I'm a respected academic. I have a vibrant social life, unlike certain lonely detectives I could name." "Sorry your wife left you because you were married to your job, Manta." Inspector Manta rolled his eyes. "You're confusing my life story with your own, Professor. I'm perfectly content as a bachelor. And if I recall, your wife left you because of certain indiscretions with a student. That, and your rather unfortunate surname, was too much to bear." "I resent that," Nutsworth pouted. "There's nothing wrong with my name. Keep telling yourself that," Manta smirked. "Now, back to the matter at hand. The murder most foul." Another well-timed thunderclap shook the castle walls. Manta smiled in satisfaction at his handiwork rigging up the special effects. Clarisse let out an impatient huff, examining her impeccable nails. "Look, Inspector, could we hurry this along? I have a nail appointment I simply cannot miss." "Well, sorry Clarissa it's Clarisse," she interjected icily. "I know what I said," Manta retorted. "Your mani-pedi will have to wait until we get to the bottom of this, sweetheart. Is the thunder sync to go off every time you say murder?" Dennis piped up curiously. A flash of lightning outside spelled out yes against the stormy sky. Martha, Professor Nutsworth's ex-wife, chose that moment to make her belated entrance, dripping rainwater on the ancient floorboards. "Sorry I'm late. I had an important knitting sale to attend to." "Martha? What the devil are you doing here?" Nutsworth sputtered, face flushing crimson. She jabbed an accusatory finger at Inspector Manta. "This imbecile thinks I strangled his uncle to death with one of my hand-knitted scarves." Manta shrugged. "The fibers don't lie, Martha. But that's not why I called you all here tonight." "Then enlighten us already," Clarisse snapped. "Who's the victim?" "My feelings," Manta announced with a dramatic flourish. Confusion flickered across Clarisse's perfectly made-up features. Deciding the eccentric detective was indeed serious, she stood abruptly. "Yeah, I'm out of here. Have fun wallowing in self-pity." "Not so fast," Inspector Manta roared. "No one leaves until the guilty party confesses." With a flick of a concealed switch, metal barriers slammed down over every possible exit, sealing them inside like a macabre clue board come to life. "My nail appointment," Clarisse wailed. "You're a monster." "Sit down," Manta barked authoritatively. She grudgingly complied. The detective whipped out a crumpled piece of paper and slapped it on the table with theatrical flair. "A bit much, don't you think?" Martha quipped. "I'll have you know I attended an elite drama camp as a youth," Manta sniffed. "Clearly it paid off." "Oh, the one in Riverside with the kidney-shaped pool and flesh-eating algae?" Martha asked. "The very same. Of course. They had double the algae back in my day before all these newfangled health regulations." "Could we please focus?" Clarisse interrupted their nostalgic reverie. "What's the deal with the paper?" Inspector Manta flipped it over, revealing the words, "Kick me," scrawled in black marker. "Someone had the audacity to tape this juvenile prank to my back yesterday. I demand the culprit step forward." "Are you serious right now?" Clarisse gaped at him incredulously. "You're holding us hostage over a stupid prank?" "It was very hurtful," Manta insisted, lower lip trembling. "A grievous attack on my dignity." "Get over yourself," Clarisse scoffed unsympathetically. "Stuff the wounded male ego back in its box where it belongs. Society has evolved. Manta protested. It's okay for men to have feelings now. I'll have you know I openly wept during the Gilmore Girls revival. Settling back into his role, Inspector Manta steepled his fingers and surveyed the motley bunch. As I was saying, you each possess means and motive for this callous act. The scene of the crime? Devon's epic year-end bash. Epic indeed, Clarisse agreed. At least until you threw this tantrum. I heard Devon made good on his threat to seduce Nutsworth's mother, Dennis gossiped. The professor hung his head in shame. Throughout the soiree, you each approached me and delivered a hearty clap on the back, Manta continued. An odd gesture, given my stunning success at juggling my career and personal life, is widely known to inspire envy. Dude, there was a huge spider on your jacket, Clarisse explained with an eye roll. We were trying to smack it off. Resilient little bugger, Nutsworth chimed in, kept crawling back. The sign was clearly some sort of arachnid magnet, Dennis deduced. A look of realization dawned on Manta's face. Then it could only be Martha. He whirled around to confront the unassuming woman. Do you have any idea, Dash? Martha held up a hand to silence him. I'll save you the trouble. Yes, I'm the one who stuck that sign on you. But it wasn't some petty prank. Manta's eyes filled with tears at the betrayal from his former sister-in-law. Why, Martha? Why would you do such a thing to me? She sighed heavily. It was an honest mistake. I thought you were nutty over there since you had borrowed his hideous corduroy jacket. Well, I'm sorry, Martha, but I'm afraid I must rescind your invitation to my birthday party, Manta said gravely. I wouldn't count on making it to your next birthday if I were you, she replied ominously. Come again. You see, I lined the tape with a slow-acting poison, Martha revealed with chilling nonchalance. It should be reaching your bloodstream any moment now. The blue tint creeping up your neck suggests you have about a minute left among the living. Manta gasped and pawed at his throat in dawning horror. In that case, you're disinvited from my funeral too. Those were the doomed detective's last words before he collapsed on the Persian rug, soon to be reunited with his dear departed uncle. Anyone know how to get out of this death trap? Dennis asked nonchalantly, towing Manta's prone form as it began its journey into rigor mortis. Allow me. Martha pulled a lacy handkerchief from her sleeve, removing an ornate brass key. She inserted it into a nearly invisible panel by the door. With a soft snick, the bolts lifted and the heavy oak swung open to reveal the rain-lashed moors beyond. Martha, you diabolical genius, Professor Nutsworth declared in awe. No wonder I married you. And divorced, let's not forget that bit, Martha replied crisply. So what now? Clarisse wondered, itching to finally have her cuticles tended to. Isn't it obvious? Martha smiled enigmatically. This castle is now without an heir. It would be a shame to let all this prime real estate go to waste. The four exchanged conspiratorial glances as they regarded Manta's rapidly cooling corpse splayed inelegantly before them. I propose a toast, Professor Nutsworth declared, producing a dusty bottle of Highland Scotch and 4 tarnished silver goblets from the sideboard as if by magic. To our dear, departed Inspector Manta, may he rest in peace, and may his estate rest in our capable hands. Here, here, they chorused, clinking their cups together. As they sipped the smoky, peaty liquor, the would-be heirs began to spin visions of what they would do with their shares of the castle. Professor Nutsworth would finally have a secluded writer's retreat to finish his languishing anthropology dissertation in peace. Well, provided the randy widows he invited could keep their hands to themselves. Martha planned to convert the East Wing into a craft studio to expand her online Etsy empire of artisanal knitwear and crocheted cozies. She was determined to corner the market on Fair Isle pattern tea towels. Dennis mostly just wanted a swanky bachelor pad to impress dates and his 72 Instagram followers. Maybe he'd add a helipad, or at least pay someone to Photoshop one in. Clarisse, ever the businesswoman, had dollar signs in her eyes as she mentally converted each drafty room into a luxury Airbnb suite. With a few truckloads of shiplap and a Joanna Gaines-inspired decorating spree, she'd have this mildewed monstrosity turned into a hipster chic, Instagram-worthy retreat. Yes, Inspector Manta's sudden, shockingly convenient demise was the best thing to happen to this devious foursome. Funny how life has a way of working out sometimes. Their celebratory imbibing and avaricious fantasies were abruptly interrupted by an authoritative pounding at the doors. Exchanging puzzled glances, Martha rebolted the doors and mechanisms, sealing them in once more. No need for uninvited guests to join this macabre party. She cracked open the peephole to peer at their visitor, and her blood ran cold. Standing on the rain-lashed stoop, illuminated by a flash of lightning, were two uniformed police officers. "What is the meaning of this?" the lead officer bellowed. Martha thought fast. "Good evening, officers. I'm afraid you've caught us at a rather awkward time. We're just in the middle of a murder mystery party." "It's true," Professor Nutsworth piped up, catching on. "Method acting, very draining stuff. We take our role-playing quite seriously." "Aha," replied the officer, sounding less than convinced. "We received reports of a disturbance at this residence. Loud voices, sounds of a struggle. Someone mentioned a poisoning. All part of the game," Martha assured him with a tittering laugh. "Arsenic and old lace, perhaps you're familiar? We're big community theater buffs." "I see," said the cop, sounding slightly reassured by the wholesome cover story. "And the body?" "CPR dummy," Dennis shouted from within. "Adds to the realism." "Say, aren't you folks technically trespassing?" the officer realized, consulting the property records on his phone. "Says here this place is owned by a Mr. Manfred Manta, currently deceased. Under probate with no clear beneficiary." "About that," Martha replied, laying on the charm. "Manfred was actually my brother-in-law. My ex-husband Bertram here is named in the will. We're just doing a walkthrough to assess any necessary repairs before putting it on the market." "I don't suppose you have any documentation to back that up?" the cop pressed. "Not on us per se," Martha admitted. "But I'd be happy to drop by the station tomorrow with the relevant paperwork. It's the darndest thing, we just can't seem to find the key to let you in to check. Silly us. This place is practically medieval." The officer sighed, eager to get out of the relentless downpour and back to the speed trap out on Route 97. "See that you do. We'll be following up. You folks have a pleasant evening, and go easy on the community theater hijinks. Okay? Might give someone the wrong impression." Of course," Martha agreed quickly. "So sorry for the misunderstanding. We'll be sure to keep it down. You officers stay safe out there." She watched through the peephole until the cruiser's tail lights disappeared down the winding drive before breathing a sigh of relief. That was too close. "Nicely done," Clarisse commended her. "Quick thinking with that theater troupe bit." "We're not out of the woods yet," Martha cautioned. "We need to get our stories straight and find some halfway legit documents before the law comes sniffing around again." "Leave that to me," Professor Nutsworth offered. "I'll bribe the Dean of Student Affairs to whip up some convincing fakes on university letterhead. He owes me after I caught him borrowing petty cash to feed his alpaca habit." "Do I even want to know?" Dennis quirked an eyebrow. "Probably best you don't," the professor replied with a shudder. And so the newly minted partners in crime got to work disposing of Inspector Manta's body and crafting their cover-up. The castle's bone orchard of a basement proved quite handy for stashing unwanted corpses. In the weeks and months to follow, many a spirited debate was held over brandy and cigars in the study as to how to divvy up their ill-gotten inheritance. Martha, ever the level-headed one, drew up a surprisingly equitable contract. Her legal acumen was yet another reason Professor Nutsworth pined for her, despite her homicidal tendencies. The castle, as it came to be known in hushed local gossip, saw a renaissance in the years following Inspector Manta's mysterious disappearance. No one seemed to question why his intrepid sleuthing career was cut short so abruptly. People went missing in these mist-shrouded moors all the time. If the halls echoed with perhaps a bit too much maniacal laughter from its new owners indulging in their eccentric whims, the swarms of trendy gastrotourists and Instavan lifers were none the wiser. The Camelot Suite in the North Turret is still regularly booked solid 6 months out. So raise a glass, dear reader, to Inspector Manta. He died as he lived a persnickety, vainglorious fool undone by his own hubris. Let his grim fate serve as a warning to any who dare prank the quick-tempered among us. Stick to texting eggplant emojis like a civilized human. In the immortal words of the bard, the evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones. Manta's bones, and all the juicy blackmail he accumulated over his career, are most definitely buried for good. Though one shouldn't be too surprised if the occasional thrill-seeking teenager tries to break into the catacombs, convinced Manta's vengeful ghost is guarding a priceless secret. That's the trouble with castle lore. It has a way of taking on a life and truth of its own. But pay no mind to those meddling interlopers. There's brandy to be drunk and dark secrets to be shared among the castle's morally dubious ruling elite. Their reign of genteel terror has only just begun.